Hi everyone, just in case. So you see Peter and Paul Fortress. This is the first island. The city was established there. The next island, oh, let me just remove this idiot from here, okay? It's not even an idiot, it's a bot. I can't really say that the bot is an idiot because it's a bot, but anyway. Okay. Hi, those who just joined us. Good to have you. Thank you so much. So far, we have Dorley, Giorgio, Helen, Kat. Hi, Marilyn. Good to see you, dear Ronnie, Satyam, and Sharon. Okay, so let's go on. And by the way, the previous walks of this avenue, the Bolshoy Avenue, are still available on my YouTube channel. With these type of tours of St. Petersburg, I mean, we have like big tours, palaces, private apartments of the Romanovs or like, the nobility. But these type of tours are different. It's my way of like a therapy, homesickness therapy, because during this white night periods, I get especially homesick, and this really helped. You have no idea how much working on these videos helped me. Yeah, well, I do shed some tears, but it's really, really helpful. It's mending me in many ways, I think. So, and this type of tours is showing you a quieter side of St. Petersburg, less touristy, sometimes definitely less glossy, less polished. And also, I take you to museums or like some small places that tourists are hardly ever taken to. And and if you have been to St. Petersburg, I know some of you have. Well, I don't think you were ever taken to that part of the city because it's like mostly for locals, for us. And we like to keep at least some areas of this we used to like to keep it to ourselves. I'm not sure how the situation is nowadays, but the video was filmed last year actually, and it still looks very quiet, very, very different from, let's say, the main avenue. So Peter and Paul Fortress, this island was the first one to be developed, and then the next one to be developed was actually the Petrograd district, the one you see on the map. However, if you look a little bit to your like left lower corner, you see the Makarova embankment, right? So actually, there's like it's islands, and there are there are bridges now. Obviously, there were no bridges back then. So, and it was a big but still isolated island. And for some reason, then Peter switched to another island, and he turned all his eyes and focus and attention on that island, and he wanted to turn the Vasilievsky Island, like one of the islands, into the center. And then his plans changed, and then another island was conquered from the Swedish. So Petrogradsky district, even though it was the second Petrogradsky island and district, it's the same name. It was the second one to be taken by Peter the Great and to be kind of included into the so-called city plan and city maps. It would be one of the last ones, among the last ones to be developed already at the turn of the 20th century. For some reason, well, the reason is simple. There were no islands. The center of the city was switched to the opposite side of the Neva River. Right across the river from the Peter and Paul Fortress, because from the windows of the Winter Palace, you can see Peter and Paul Fortress and the Petrogradsky Island right behind it. So, but that island, because there were no bridges, was seen mostly as a rural area. That's why there was a botanical garden, right? That's why this was mostly, countryside residences were built there. It's close, but not that close. So that's why this island is still very central, but much quieter. So you see the botanical garden over there, and this Bolshoy Prospect, or Bolshoy Avenue. It's one of the oldest avenues that existed. This avenue is actually from the very beginning, from the early 1700s, early 18th century. But there used to basically be wooden houses and small villas, and things started to change when the bridge was built. Finally, the Trinity Bridge was constructed. Things started to change. That's why on this island, you can see both still a couple of very small two-story cottages. There is even one, actually two, but we're going to see one today, wooden house, very small. And also you can see a lot of Art Nouveau and eclecticism, because this area after the bridge was inaugurated at the very end of the 19th century. So, and this was the time when Art Nouveau was in its glory and its prime. So, a lot of buildings on the Petrograd island would be constructed in this style, or something neo, something eclectic. Well, this house we saw last time, so I'm not going to talk much about it. But this is the Putilova house. So Putilova was the wife of a big, industrialist, Putilov. He built a plant where he produced um, all sorts of constructions and beams and rails for the railroad. And Ippolit Pretra was the architect who was in charge of the whole project. And Putilov was one of the richest industrialists in the country. So, yeah, the house that he owned, one of the houses that he owned, was registered under his wife's names. This was I've been talking about it so much. So it was a very common thing to register the property on wives' names, like paperwork wise, liabilities wise, things like that. So that's a little sketch of the house. So that's why this style was very popular, and a lot of buildings can be found in this style. But also you can find a lot of very small buildings, 2 floors, 3 floors. Some of them have been extended, some floors were added, or some buildings are no longer around. And on the spot, something modern would be standing, such as this one, for example. This plot of land was always occupied. First, this was just a wooden cottage, somebody's summer residence. Because of the absence of bridge, it felt distant. So people would get away here. Well, those who could afford it would get away here for the summertime to, I would say, get away from the noise and get away from the smells of the big city. Imagine like all these, horses and their waste, and also all the other smells of the city and public toilets. And just imagine all the cesspits and the courtyards. Everything was smelling horribly, especially during the summer. So people would get away here. This is now a modern building. It's called Arbita. It's just a business center. I actually have been there a couple of times. I don't remember for something, but I had no idea. Well, now I know. I mean, several years ago, I found out that this big, not a big, small business center is standing on the spot where a cinema once stood. And that cinema was built in this constructivist, modernist style in the Soviet period. It was a cafe, Arbita. Well, guess when it was built, and guess why it was called so during the space race. And it was a cinema and a cafe. There were a lot of cinemas built on this island because, again, it was developed starting from the early 20th century. And this was the time when, little by little, people would go crazy about movies, and cinemas were becoming, the most popular kind of attraction. So it used to be standing here on the spot, and then they took down the building, the old building, and built just a business center. But so that's what I'm talking about. See all these 2 and 3 floor buildings, they're actually very old. Like for example, the building of the orange color, so you kind of see the 3 floor building, right? And behind it, you see a much bigger modern building, like residential buildings that, I don't know, 7 floors, 8 floors. Obviously, this is something very new. It's not a listed building. No. Well, but at least that modern residential building standing behind this one looks kind of blends a little bit. At least its palette and its design doesn't really stand out much from the rest of the neighborhood, which is good. This building, the 3-floor building, is an educational center. It used to be a gymnasium, an educational school, and a lyceum. So gymnasium, and even now it's also a gymnasium, educational facility. And it's an important building for me because in this gymnasium used to study one of my favorite poets of the Silver Age of Russian literature. This is the period of the turn of the 20th century. A lot of Silver Age poets, well, kind of foresaw and welcomed the revolution. A lot of them were symbolists because they kind of felt that something big was coming. A lot of them would start as symbolists and then would switch to avant-garde. And so it was a period of experiments and freedom and the sense of something, some big changes, that were about to happen. So Alexander Blok is and probably will always be one of my favorite poets of that period. We even visited the museum, the house museum where he lived, just in case that recording is available for my sponsors. And in this photograph, this is him together with his classmate. He's in the second row, the second to the left. That's him. Just in case. I think this photo was taken maybe early 1900s. I'm not entirely sure which year, but this is exactly that building, and that's his class. And since I'm talking about Alexander Blok, I cannot just say he's my favorite poet and then just stop it. Obviously not. I wanna say something else. So I want to share with you one of my, well, now it's not my absolute favorite, but one of my absolute favorite poets by Alexander Blok. This is the photograph of the first printed book, still when he was still alive. I think it's 1907. It's called The Unknown Lady, Neznakomka. Obviously, it was all in Russian. And just in case I'm providing here the original in Russian, I'll read a few lines here and then the translation. So one of the, I would say, recurrent characters of Alexander Blok would be this unknown lady, very romantic and mysterious. So this unknown lady in some poems would be actually sort of a sign of big changes, sometimes a sign of revolution, sometimes it was kind of the embodiment of his sins and fantasies, during the symbolism era. Finally, like sex started to be a lot more verbalized in poetry. So that's maybe why I also like Blok. But in many ways, I'm just kind of I'm going to read just a few things or a few verses maybe. По вечерам над ресторанами горячий дух, дик и глух, и правит окриками пьяными весенний и тлетворный дух. Actually, this kind of really sets you into the atmosphere of totally smoked and very, I would say, alcohol-induced atmosphere of taverns, something like that. И медленно пройдя меж пьяными, всегда без спутников одна, дыша духами и туманами, она садится у окна. And then I'm gonna read the same verses in translation in English, so you'll get what I'm talking about. But with this, it's like she's always on her own. She's always covered in the mist of perfume and mist of perfume and mystery, and she's always alone and sitting by the window. So many specialists claim that in many cases that unknown lady was simply a prostitute, which Blok was, well, yeah, he was famous for all these promiscuous, relationships, even though he had been married. So, yeah. So, and the translation is coming your way, don't worry. Each evening over restaurants there hangs the hot air, heavy, wild, and numb, while drunken shouts proclaim the reign of spring's corrupting poisonous breath. It's the AI translation, not the best one, but it kind of really sets you where it has to set you, in a way. And I think the next verse would be, and slowly passing through the drunkards, alone, forever, unaccompanied, breathing her perfume out of mist, she takes her place beside the window. So kind of you have an idea. So a lot of this, I would say, mysteries, promiscuity, alcohol, and yeah, so The world was on the verge of collapse for sure. So were the people. So was the country. Yeah. And this is the handwritten copy of one of the versions of the poem. And Alexander Blok was really, really popular. And he inspired a lot of artists of the same period, such as Leon Bax, who was actually a Jewish artist. I spoke about him. I gave a separate tour about Leon Bax and how much he worked for the Miroskuvstva, for Diaghilev, for the art community that was promoted by Diaghilev. A lot of Art Nouveau architects as well and artists of that period were part of this community. And this is and this is how um, Leon Bax saw this unknown lady in mists, always alone. Yeah, so yeah. Anyway, in this postcard, actually, you can see this gymnasium. Videnska Gymnasium. It's called Videnska, and then one of the streets is called Videnska because there was a church of Videnia, church of the introduction to the temple. So it's one of the episodes of the life of Jesus. And the church was consecrated to that, and the street and the neighborhood. So there are a lot of Videnska streets in St. Petersburg. There are several Vidensky churches. Yeah, you see, it's a big avenue, so it's actually called Big Avenue, but there are not so many people. I assume that like this is really quiet. Maybe it's the evening of a weekend. I honestly don't remember. This video was filmed almost the same time several other avenues of that area was filmed, but also this was kind of a playground for a lot of architects, and many architects earned their reputation and had their first success by given projects for construction on the Petrogradsky Island. But the architect I'm going to talk now about didn't really need to earn his reputation because he had already earned a reputation as one of the most prolific and creative architects of the Art Nouveau period, Frederick Lidwall, who was actually Swedish. He built a lot of buildings, and many of them are actually on this island, but not only. That's him. He was born and raised in St. Petersburg to a Swedish family. However, after the revolution, they had to flee, and then I believe he lived in Sweden and built a lot in Finland, in Sweden, and there are a lot of buildings you can find in Sweden and Finland still around. So Lidwall he created a lot of masterpieces of so-called Northern Art Nouveau. Sometimes we refer to it even as to the Finnish Art Nouveau because of the colors, because of the granite and dark stones and the facade decorations. Yeah. So, well, this one, for example, on the Kamenastrovsky Avenue, remember, we had a tour of the Art Nouveau Avenue. That's on the same island. And at some point, the Bolshoy Avenue is going to intersect this Art Nouveau Avenue, and you will immediately recognize it immediately. I try to refer as less as possible to, other areas, but sometimes I just absolutely have to. Some of the buildings will look familiar. So this is all St. Petersburg creations of Fyodor Lidwall. Each house is better than the next one, than the previous one. I mean, look at this. Isn't it amazing? So this one is probably the most unassuming, if you can say so, about Lidwall's works. But yeah, it's still there. And as it was saying, it was the playground for a lot of architects, but those who could afford would always hire the best ones because this land was expensive. The prices skyrocketed when the bridge was inaugurated. Pavel Suzor, a name that should ring a bell to you because the Zinga building, the Zinga sewing machine factory building was constructed by him early 1900s. So again, he didn't need to earn his reputation. He didn't really need any concessions he was one of the best. Well, this one, his clientele would be mainly the richest people of the country and the biggest organizations such as banks. Yeah, this one is very close to the Nevsky Avenue as well. So Pavel Suzor built the building, which you will see a little bit down the street with a brown dome. I also sped up the video a little bit, so it's gonna be we're gonna reach it like in a blink of an eye. But the house that he built was commissioned by the Badaev family. I don't expect you to remember this house from any of my walks, but I did show it to you once. It's not here. It's in the other area. It's in another area, and I will be taking you there as well because there are so many more architectural gems in St. Petersburg that I haven't shown you yet. It's one of them. So Badaev family was also one of the richest, like all this, like the entire clientele of Suzor. Makes sense completely. And they were one of the richest development. They owned one of the richest development companies. But the good thing is they were also involved in a lot of social projects, in a lot of charity projects that, well, obviously, well, aimed at helping I would say the least privileged groups of Russian society. There is a little square, yes, so it's still a monument to Vladimir Lenin. Yeah, but it's just because I guess they're just simply too lazy to get rid of it. And there's a lot of paperwork. So, but I don't know. It has nothing to do with the current situation. In some cities, they want to put a monument to Stalin again. This has a lot to do with the current situation. Lenin, definitely not. Definitely not. So that's the house I'm talking about, the Badaev house. It was just one of the residential buildings. And this house used to have a dome, but like it now has a dome, but this is the new dome that it has on the tower, right? So there's a tower and there is a little dome on the tower. You see it in this picture. This is the original one. And then during the Second World War period, during the siege, when the city was heavily bombarded, the dome was damaged. It wasn't completely destroyed, but it was really badly damaged. And the reason, well, it could have been way worse. This building, the dome could have been completely destroyed, and the entire building even could have burned, but it didn't, because during the siege period, 872 days, the city was heavily bombed, especially at nights, and there were also a lot of small makeshift bombs that were thrown on the city. Not really rockets and missiles, right? It's not the same period yet, but there would be, some explosive substances that the city was also bombarded with, and only thanks to a group of volunteers who would be basically on duty every night they were there making sure that if the house was targeted by those explosives, these people were there to well, not to dismantle them, but at least to throw them off the roof, or at least put them out. And only thanks to that, the dome didn't really burn, because had the dome been burned, the entire house could have been also burned. So at some point, it was decided to completely tear down the main dome. But then, well, they will hopefully put it back at some point. At least from what I know, the smaller domes on these little sections in the house, at least so these domes are put back. But as far as I understand, they are restored ones, and they are there now. They restored and put them back, or maybe they restored them on the spot. There are some details that have survived the bombings, such as those windows. And this is what one of the entrances looks like. It looks like a 5-star hotel. However, it's just an entrance to a residential building. So I've never been inside. It's just the photos I found online. I've never been inside. In most cases, such houses, the entrance to such houses, lobbies to such houses are not really accessible unless you know the code, or you have the key, or just people that can let you in. Well, we will be, inside this. We will visit a couple of buildings more, but well, not this one. Now the Khrushchev house, the one just um, across from here. So Khrushchev was Ivan Khrushchev was a merchant and a philanthropist. He was the head of one of the charitable organizations that also provided support and education to underprivileged groups, especially children from um, orphanages. And by the way, that portrait that I have just shown you of Khrushchev was made. So Ivan Khrushchev, that's the house that belonged to him. That's the portrait. And the portrait was made by Ilya Repin. Ilya Repin wouldn't be just making portraits of anyone. Obviously, he had a very good clientele, also very rich. And Ilya Repin, but also Ilya Repin very rarely create portraits of people he didn't like. Sometimes he had to do that for money, yes, but there had to be a really, really good money. And with Khrushchev, it wasn't really about the money. And Khrushchev, well, the usual thing, the ground floor is for businesses, and then the rest for the apartments. So on the ground floor of the Khrushchev house used to be an umbrella store that belongs to a man under the last name Pisarev. This is the photographs from the internet. I haven't been to this house myself. I don't know anyone who lives in the house, so fortunately not. But there's an interesting story that, again, I remind you that there used to be a lot of gardens on this island, a lot of just small country houses and gardens. So when they started building this, well, just to start before building this house, they had to prepare the land, just do the usual thing. And there used to be a garden on the spot. When they were digging, they discovered two human bodies that had been buried in this land for 40 years at least. And the bodies were not identified, as far as I understand, at least from what I've been told. And yeah, that's a creepy story. But well, just that, just that. So all that was built, I would say, within like couple of decades, believe it or not. And the rest is, well, the next period of big development would be the Soviet period. Mainly, if you see modern buildings in these areas, in most cases, these modern buildings are standing on the spot of a building that had been destroyed by the bombardment, by one of the bombardments, during the siege period, something like that. This house, you know why I'm showing it to you? Well, actually, I like the doors, but these doors I don't really have the sweetest memories of. The thing is, it's my stomping ground, so I used to spend quite some time in this area, and these doors I don't really have a lot of fond memories of. Well, they're beautiful, but they are the doors to the tax office. So one of the local tax offices that I used to be registered, um, registered in, was in this building. And that's why I'm not really a big fan of this building. And this building was bombed. That's exactly the reason. The whole building was redeveloped in the Soviet period. So that's just what happened. And you see the building just across the street from it doesn't have any windows because of the wave. Yeah, and just photographs from the inside. I didn't take any photos. I wasn't really in that mood whenever I was in this building, so I didn't take any photos. I don't even remember this one. But there is an interesting story I would like to share with regards to this building. The thing is that it's now a cosmetic store, but this house was also built at the turn of the 20th century. It was an office and a store for a shoe factory, Skorokhod. And well, no, I don't think you can read any. No, you can't read any of that, but you just have to trust me. So this was a shopping center. Well, it was a store, a flagship store, and the office of a big shoe factory, Skorohod. And I have a story. So once I had a tourist from the States. She had Russian roots. Her grandma was from St. Petersburg, and she wanted to see where her grandma was from. She had very little information, and she wanted me to take her to the areas her grandma, as a young lady, would hang out because well, she wasn't from the noble family, but she was from a well-to-do family. So I took her to some areas, also not touristy, because I wanted her to feel what the life was like of a local, but like a century ago. And eventually, we took this road because I wanted to take it to the island where a lot of like young people would hang out by the water, and all that. Was also a yacht club. And we passed by this building, and I told her, well, actually, your grandma probably, well, must have owned shoes, and she could have really bought them here in this store. And then she asked me which shoes. I told her Skarahod. She obviously couldn't, well, it didn't really ring a bell, or it did because it sounded maybe a little bit familiar. And then she told me that uh, that her grandma actually had the shoes that she kept from Russia, and she kept the shoebox also from and that shoebox she kept some photographs, and she remembered it, and it was Skorohod because I showed her the old packaging, and she was, yes, she remembered that. She didn't see the shoes obviously, but she remembered the shoebox. Isn't it amazing? So I will forever cherish the story. And then she burst into tears because it is really possible that exactly from that building her grandma bought the shoes. And that shoebox she took with her all the way to the States. Wow, it gives me goosebumps, honestly. Yeah, so this is um, um, some ad from this Karahod store. I don't, well, it's just kind of announcement that the store would open shortly. And this building is kind of a triangular shape. Well, it's like not triangle, it's kind of three sections. It's like the U, letter U in English. Well, from here you can see Skorohod shoes. Yeah. So that was an interesting story. Obviously, it could have been a different store because there were several of them, but it's likely, it could have happened um, easily. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. And you see, just next to this store, another very, I would say, northern style building. All these are not palaces. These are all residential buildings. There's not really, I would say, um, there are spectacular exhibits of some residential buildings, spectacular examples of, let's say, Art Nouveau residential buildings, but not really palaces. That's a whole different vibe. So, this is the map. So you see the Bolshoy Prospect in the bottom, and then you see the river. This river is called Karpovka, and there is another island, right? And this road continues, basically the Bolshoy Avenue continues, and you see the red pin. That's where we're heading to. So I'm taking you from the Bolshoy Prospect to that small area to take you to this wooden house. So this is one of the very few, probably two or three wooden houses that are still around. Take it in, take it in. So this is the example of these, 19th century countryside architecture. It's not really an exceptional, I would say it looks very typical. It looks very similar to what other buildings used to look like, but other buildings are not around. But this one is still around. So this is the photo from the internet, and this is the Avantgarde Museum, and this is what it looked like. So this is the photo from the 80, 90, something like that. It looks very rural, but that's what it was. That's what it was. And that's what its building looked like last year, I think. Yeah, it was last year. It was filmed last year. Um, so this street is now named after Popov. Well, the one of the inventors of a radio. So I wasn't exactly honest with you saying that this is the original, 19th century house. It's a copy because unfortunately the building burned pretty badly, and it's a wooden building, so it was really badly burned in 2000s. So what they decided to do, they decided to rebuild it exactly in the same way, which is better than nothing, I would say. So, but this house, it's new, but it looks just identical to what the original house used to look like. I hope you're okay with that. And this is the Avant-Garde Museum, and this is Misha from like 12 years ago or so. We visited this museum ourselves. And again, so this is one of those very small museums that I really like. I like the small museums, without crowds, very niche, um, that very few people know of. I love it. I feel so much at ease in this building. It's not like I don't like the Hermitage, right? Or Peterhof. I mean, of course I do, but that's exactly my favorite thing. And nobody knows of this museum, but everybody knows Malevich. Everybody knows Kandinsky. Everybody knows Petrov, Watkin. Well, even if you don't know the names, there's no way you didn't see some of the artworks. And very few people know that actually the Malevich, the triptych, the famous black square, and the entire triptych is actually part of the triptych, was actually created in this house. Well, at least the idea and the concept was born in this very house. So the house actually belonged to, well, it's a museum now. It was originally intended for, how shall I put it? It was purchased by a merchant who was the um, a very generous donor and supporter of young aspiring artists. So this house was turned into a small living commune, a small residential commune for young artists. And one of the families that settled in this house was well, um, how shall I put it? Now on this ground floor, on the ground floor, the first floor of the house is this floor is usually devoted to contemporary artist exhibitions that work in this avant-garde style, a lot of mixed media, a lot of experiments. St. Petersburg artists, contemporary arts is just one of the exhibitions, but on the second floor, there is a museum of the people who lived in this house. They didn't own it, they rented it, and they rented it at a very low cost. Mikhail Matyushin and his wife, Elena Guro. By the way, this portrait was made by Elena Guro. I don't really expect you to know Elena Guro. I don't even expect you to know Mikhail Matyushin. But these are the people without whom the Black Square could have never been created. And Russian avant-garde movement, well, it's not like it wouldn't have existed, but it would have looked very different. Elena Guro. She was and all these people, I don't know, maybe it was just a sign of the times that a lot of creative people were also very diverse in what they did. It's not just that this person was an artist and he always just was an artist. No, they were artists, poets, designers, musicians. And Elena Guro, she was an artist, she was a poet, she was an art critic herself and a literature critic herself. Mikhail Matyushin, that's the two of them, was actually a composer. He was a musician, but who also liked to paint and who also liked to write poems. And he was actually very good at all of that. But again, yeah, it's like early 1900s. They moved into this building, and then actually they moved into the house in 1913, and he stayed in the house up until 1934 when he passed away. They were still allowed to stay in this building, but he would have been able to stay in this house had he been painting, things like that. So this is Elena Gouraud, early 1900s. This is very typical, definitely, Belle Epoque, painting, which would have been completely disregarded by the Bolsheviks. But obviously, that was not the case. So because their art revolutionized, evolved and was revolutionary in many ways, and they were lucky to have lived at that period, because 1920s was the period, and 1920s was the period of relative freedom for these futurist poets, avant-garde artists, things like that. Well, let's first talk about Matyushin, Elena Gouraud, their life, and then we'll switch to the avant-garde as it is. So in this room, we have a lot of memorial items. It's also the photo of what the room looked like. In the photo on the wall, you see the piano. That's the original piano. So even though the house itself is new, but the contents, at least, is actually memorial. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And well, on the piano that belonged to Matyushin, and he worked at this piano, you see the photo enlarged, so that's exactly the room. Just doesn't have the wallpapers, but the paintings you could see just before we took the steps. And Matyushin worked exactly at this piano. He was a composer, and he also, by the way, made violins. And it was a very good side gig for him. That's him next to his piano. It was so elegant. I like the moustache. And but he also carved from wood, and he created this wooden sculpture himself, and it's still there. It's in the museum. Or these items, he also created it himself. It was just his hobby. I don't know. I keep getting this inferiority complex. So this craft market, and then this a person who wore so many hats, and it's just me, like, what am I even doing in this world, right? I question, myself. Yeah, anyway. Or the palette. This is the original palette that belonged to Matyushin, and he made it himself. And it's his his brushes. Um, and the paintings, these are his paintings. Well, sometimes it's paintings both by him and Elena Gouraud. It's not just like he has a separate room for Elena Gouraud and Mikhail Matyushin. And the art was, I would say, quite similar. And that's me from maybe also 12 years ago. Unfortunately, I wasn't in this museum many times. I've only been there several. So this is just probably me 12 years ago. Judging me having no wrinkles, that's probably, yeah, 12 years ago, probably. Yeah. And this is their, I don't know, it's not a wardrobe. I'm not even sure what this is. Their furniture. And also these are his instruments for wood carving. And that's Misha standing to the same bookcase, or just a bookcase, and the same carving instruments that Mikhail Matyushin worked with. That's it. It's also the painting. I think that's probably Elena Gouraud, probably not Matyushin. So yeah, that's Elena Gouraud, beautiful woman with a very tragic fate. She actually died the next year they moved into this house. She had leukemia. She died at the age of 36. She was about to turn 37. Very sad. They loved each other. She wasn't his first wife, and he remarried after that as well, and also lived in this house with his third wife. That's their table, that's their desk. And so Matyushin worked a lot at this desk. Elena Guro had a room next door. It's just the belongings of Matyushin, some stationery. I'm not sure what these are. And this is a little box. Well, it's a little, I'm not even sure what this is. Well, probably for the first aid or something. That also he carved it. It's a swan. Can you see the swan? Incredible. So that's the author's copy of the painting, Mikhail Matyushin, with a violin. So he played the piano, he played a violin. I think he played several musical instruments. I don't remember now how many. So, and he also made violins. Not everyone who plays violin can make violin. He could, and they were actually regarded as very good. So it was a very good side hustle for Matyushin. So that's the author's copy. That's the copy by Elena Guro, but the original is in the Russian museum, so it's precious, but well, not the original. And now, speaking of, this is the room of Elena Guro. As I said, she lived a short life, well, this house was always full of people. These are all her paintings, and some she was the center. I would say people would gather around her. Well, her and Matyushin, and she's the one who created this, I wouldn't say like a coziness and the good vibe. Everyone felt at ease, and also um, she was regarded as equal. In this house, everyone, well, I would say in general, well, the creative people of that time were very progressive. Many of them were very progressive. So in this community, men and women were completely equal, and the talent of both was regarded like equally cool. And she was, well, just as valuable as Matyushin. And she connected Matyushin to many artists herself. These are her personal belongings, her comb, um, uh, I don't know, maybe some items for jewelry, some brushes. But the most interesting item here is the sweet that she never got to finish, the cranberry dessert, sugar-coated cranberries. So I think it's a little bit expired. So, but it's just the sweets it's her favorite sweets, and she never really finished those. This is my photo taken like 12 years ago. Uh, so it says uh, Klukvinny Morse by Blixen and Robinson. Blixen and Robinson, it was the confectionery. But I don't even know how to translate that. Anyway, so I think there's also chestnuts there, and I think berries as well over there, but they don't look, they're sugar coated. So they were coated with like sugar icing. That's why they're not red. So maybe she also added some chestnuts there. Is it chestnuts or conquerors? Yeah, chestnuts, right? It's chestnuts. So it was her favorite, and she never really finished it. So and this is just, in the video. I remember I took that photo. It's probably one of the things that I remembered, from the very first visit, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. No, more than 12 years ago, actually. 13, probably. Yeah, this is Elena Guro herself, in her room at her study, writing a poem. Yeah, and this is her painting. Well, this gives me a very Art Nouveau vibe. Very. It's called Sprouts. It is Art Nouveau. A bit avant-garde, a bit Art Nouveau. I don't know. So this is also the painting in the room. So and Elena Guro connected Matyushin to a lot of people. And the people who were most frequent in this house were actually these fellows. Matyushin is the one, the second from the left with the mustache. And I will tell you about all of them. So they were like the closest friends. For example, Alexei Kruchonych, he was a poet, very avant-garde poet who experimented with rhymes and styles. But also Kruchonych illustrated his own poems, and he illustrated nearly every poem that he created. That's him surrounded with his books and somebody else's books. I believe that's him. That's also him. It's kind of a collage created by one of the fellow artists. Pavel Filonov, a very big name in Russian avant-garde, and also his works are considered really, really expensive in the art market. This is like, and he also worked in multiple techniques. For example, Filonov could create a very conventional works, such as the portrait of Elena Glebova. She was his sister, but also it's like 1915, right? And the next year or the previous 1914, he created this very different, right? Very different. So Pavel Filonov, a big name in Russian avant-garde, but it's not the tour about avant-garde itself, right? I'm just kind of introducing you to some names that you probably, well, might know, might not. I don't know. But this one, this is Kazimir Malevich. This one, So Kazimir Malevich was a very frequent guest in this house, almost on a daily basis. And you remember the black square. So if you come closer, you will actually see that it's not really that black, and it's not actually the straight lines. There are a lot of things one can talk about one can tell you with regards to the black square, but it's not only the black square. There are a lot of paintings he's famous for. So he experimented a lot with the colors, with the shape, with the shades, and the topics. Very different. Oh, and by the way, this is interesting. This is the this is the portrait, or hold on a second. Just a second. I want to check the year, but I'm not sure. Let me see. Okay, so this is Kazimir Malevich, 1913. This is the portrait of Matyushin. This is the portrait of Matyushin by Kazimir Malevich, a portrait. But you can tell this is about a musician because you can see the keys. And this is the keys of that piano. The rest, I don't know. Maybe the hair. I I can't. I don't know. Joseph Shkolnik, a Jewish friend. They couldn't care less about the background. Joseph Shkolnik is not really known. Not is not really that well known, but I find Shkolnik's works actually really lovely. He wasn't exactly the avant-garde artist. He mostly, I would say, gravitated towards Art Nouveau and some symbolism. But he experimented a lot with all sorts of mixed media, which was a big deal back then. Yes, and so Malevich, um, Kruchonych, and Matyushin decided to create an opera together, Victory Over the Sun. And they actually created a lot of things together. They worked a lot together. For example, this is the originals, handmade. Uh, Hold on a second. Let me just double check when my next tour is to begin. I think it's in 30 minutes. Yeah, it's in 30 minutes, so it's good. I'm gonna need probably another 5 minutes and then we're through. So, but in 30 minutes, I'm gonna take you to the house of Ilya Chavchavadze, not far from Tbilisi. But back to this. Back to this. So these are the handmade collection of poems that was created by this kind of a trio, Kruchonych, Malevich, Matyushin, Elena Guro. They they was a dream team, honestly. And at some point, they decided also to write an opera, to create an opera. Malevich was the in charge of the specs, in charge of the decorations and costumes. Matyushin was in charge of the music, and Kruchonik, as a poet, was in charge of the script. And these are also a lot of, manuscripts, artworks, newspaper cutouts about the community. So they decided to create this opera, very experimental. I would say it had a lot of like a mixed bag of reviews when it was premiered. So these are the three people I'm talking about, but they were, but uh, now it is regarded as one of the groundbreaking operas of the time. But obviously, the audience was not really ready for it. So this is the poster to this post-revolutionary production of the opera. Uh, all is well that begins well and has not ended, like the motto. So, but this is the poster for the Victory Over the Sun. This is the first printed uh, version of the script for the opera, and so it says, and this is the photo I found online. It's now back on stage. Well, it's been on stage for about 30 years or so, but when it was created, it didn't. Well, it wasn't really given a go. But it's just see the costumes even. They're so unconventional. And these are all the costumes were created by Malevich. And you can see a lot of elements that's, well, definitely familiar. They look so familiar. So all the works that world society, now know of, like they, well, that the Malevich is known for in the world, is that it actually came from that opera, and they worked on the designs and they worked on the opera together in this house. It was like a big hub, creative hub of St. Petersburg in this very small wooden house. Uh, Incredible. And so this triptych, it also was part of the Victory Over the Sun production. This is my photo from the Russian Museum, taken, I don't know, several years ago. That's me, definitely several years ago. That's that's Malevich. And this came from the costume for the Victory Over the Sun production, created in this house, within these walls. Yeah, and also there are a lot of sketches, preliminary, designs by Elena Guro and Malevich, well, not Malevich, sorry, Matyushin. And so sort of the video is a little bit, is not that smooth because Oleg was not allowed to use his gimbal. So he was just filming, the usual way. And that's not very good, but it could have been worse. I think this is a very important place, and we don't really know much about it. And I mean, in general, not really much is known about it. Well, it is what it is, and so Matushin passed away, as I said, in 1934, and the personal belongings were kept elsewhere. The house remained the communal apartment. That's the photo from like 12 years ago, and this is like one of the rooms for temporary exhibitions. So it now looks different. So I'm not sure if this is the arrangement is still there. Also, there are exhibited paintings that were given as gifts to Matyushin or Elena Guro, such as this one. Sofia Baudouin de Courtenay. who is related to a famous linguist, Etienne Baudoin de Courtenay. Big deal. That's me. And there's also a nice yard. This is the back side of the house because that's how it used to be, right? It has to be a country. It had to be a country house, so it had to have a house and a little garden. So the garden is still there, and you can recognize Misha next to Malevich. Yes, it's just some photos from my camera. So next time we're going to continue the series of well, by the way, even in this photo, you see this ugly pink house. I mean, it's not ugly, it's just, a barrack. It's also from actually, well, probably 19th century, could be even earlier. I'm not sure. So that's what it was. And so next time we continue our walk on the Bolshoy Avenue because there is still a lot to see. And I will be taking you to a museum of history of photography. It's a private collection with a lot of interesting exhibit, old cameras, old photos, and a lot of photographs of old St. Petersburg and families of St. Petersburg. Again, this is a very niche, very small museum that nobody really goes to, but Anna. And Alex, like, Anna, why do you want me to go there? Like, this museum doesn't even have a website. They don't even pick up the phone. It's like, I know, but it's there. Trust me, it's there. It's like, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So the chat is back on. Sorry, I overran by like 5 minutes. Not a big deal, but in 25 minutes from now, I can't wait to catch up with you for the tour of a beautiful, cozy Sagorama house of Ilya Chevchavadze. Sometimes he's referred to as the architect of Georgian nationalism. I'm not really a big fan of the way it is worded. Really, this is like not the best wording, but he is definitely one of the, I would say, the founding fathers of the Georgian nation of the 19th century. So, but yeah, we will talk about it. Let me know if you have any questions, and also I will be, if my computer allows that. Okay, give me a second. Also, I wanted to thank all of you who supported me after my art market tour. So thank you so much for your tips. And well, let me share just once again the links for the upcoming tours and also the links. Sharon, I will address the comment. I haven't read it yet. Just a second. I'm having it's really giving me a hard time pasting the links. For some reason, it's not really working as it should. Yeah, that's okay. Let me see the chat. What's going on? Thank you, Marilyn. The last museum, you mean the Fan History Museum? Oh, yeah, that's a unique museum and it's already closed. So I used whatever I could find also from my camera roll, my short videos, because I used to film, small bits and short videos because I was thinking to put it together for my, YouTube channel that actually was never launched at that time. So near the beginning of the tour, you talked about someone who was born from a Swedish family. Yes, it was Frederick of Fedor Lidwall. Dolly, thank you for your tips. Fedor Lidwall of Frederick Lidwall, an architect. Yeah, I've spoken a lot about him on other tours. Lidwall, yes. There were a lot of Swedish people living in St. Petersburg. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. And as far as I understand, there are a lot of buildings still can be found in Finland and in Sweden. He lived a long life, and he just continued his work in Sweden, in his ancestral land, so to speak, because he was born in St. Petersburg. For a long time, he didn't even consider himself Swedish, but that's just how it worked. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. It has been fun. Tony, that's okay. Oh, now you sent even more than you usually do. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dolly. Thank you for your tips. You're always very supportive. So I will see you in 20 minutes in a very different setting in Saguramo village, not far from Tbilisi. It's a very fresh video. I filmed it last week, and I can't wait to take you there. It's a lovely summer house. It's cozy. It's not a palace, and it's a home, and it's the original house with the a lot of well, it's full of the memorial items, and it feels like a home. So I can't wait to take you there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your interest in my tours. Thank you for your support, for your tips, for shares, for checking on me. And thank you. Well, again, these type of tours I don't expect to be, attended well, anything. These are very niche, very, very special things. Like who would want to see my tax office's branch? Like nobody. Nobody wants to see my tax office. Former. It's not the one. It's not. It's one of my. I changed registration several times. So yes, thank you, Darling. Thank you, Helen. This is unique. Yeah, Sharon. Oh, everyone, welcome to my tax office branch. But in St. Petersburg, polyclinics, tax office, some other doctors, in some other facilities are housed in these historic buildings, and they actually are gorgeous. I have some photographs, or like in Moscow too, because Grisha, my son, was born in Moscow, and his pediatrics. Well, he's like the polyclinics for the newborns that we were registered to also was located in the historic building. So I just kept taking pictures, like every time I would go there. Texas, yeah, yeah. Tell me about it. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for everything, for your interest, for support, and for all the loves. If you missed the market tour, it's available. Go check it out. The links are over there. I can't imagine you would have been allowed to film in the tax office. Of course not. Of course not. And it's one of the buildings I never really wanted to take pictures of. Obviously not. But I have filmed in a bank, a gorgeous bank. Actually, one of the tours I absolutely have to take you there. Let me show you something and just tell you what building I'm talking about. Hold on a sec. I know we have, things to attend to, but just give me a sec. I'll show you the building I'm talking about. You probably would want to see it. Just a minute. Okay, now that's my tax office. Probably somebody somewhere here. So remember Pavel Suzor, the architect, right, who built the Zinga sewing machine factory building? No, I'm not going to find it. I probably won't. Wait. No, please. No, it should be earlier. Okay, so it probably will be here. No. That house, the green one, was built by Lidval. So the next one, the Badaev house, was built by Pavel Suzor. That's him. So I once was at a bank. It wasn't even my bank. So this is the Singer sewing machine factory building. But I was there because it's still a bank. That's what I'm talking about. And I filmed it. I didn't ask for permission. It was just me and my phone, and I filmed it. And I still have this video. It's like very short, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. Not really bad quality. So I'll definitely take you there at some point. I just need to see what to combine it with. Yeah, gorgeous. Okay, that's it. We're done. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you so much. It's so sweet. I need to take a photo of that. Yeah, it's really what I've been needing to hear, especially after seeing all these talented people and just thinking myself of orangutan. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.